My name is Reggie, the head football coach at Central High School in St. Joseph, Missouri.
Hello, my name is Jamal McMurray. I'm very proud to be part of this forum, part of this conversation about people of all colors succeeding.
Hey, my name is Myron McCant, and I am Vice President and CFO of Katie Learning Academy.
Hey, my name is Jamie Grayson, Executive Director of POAC Succeed, and today we are bringing to you on a series called You Don't Know What You Don't Know. I'm here with my guys today, just sharing the Black experience in honor of Black History Month, and more importantly, Black future.
I've known Jamie for probably over 20 years, and it's a pleasure for me to be here.
I'm very proud to be part of this because it's a very much needed topic to kind of dig into.
And we're going to just have an authentic conversation about our experiences and hopefully bring some knowledge to the audience today about just our walk in life and things that we can do to move us forward as a community, as a people, and more importantly, together as one.
And it's not only about the African American experience, but it is an experience from all people.
But today, I want you to take time and listen to this conversation with these guys and learn from their experiences and then apply some of the things that they've said to your own life and see how we can also bring change not only in our homes, but more importantly in our communities at large. Enjoy. So let's jump into this then. Let me just ask the question. So in 2020, we saw all the social unrest. What did you learn for yourself about 2020? What was the takeaway for you? Jamal, what do you think?
So 2020 is, as we all know, a pretty memorable year, to say the very least. I lost two very close family members, one to COVID, and another one shortly thereafter. So my family lost two people I want to say 2 months apart. And you know, it's crazy because both family members were from two different perspectives of life. One was relatively struggling, one was doing extremely well. And it made me realize, like, when it's your time, that's it. You know, whether you're doing really well in life, you're successful, whatnot, or you're struggling and whatever, something catches up to you, you're done. It made me realize one of my 4 principles, which is live your life now. You know, and it literally went into fruition a couple of months after COVID started to buy my car. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go to Maserati. I'm gonna buy it, and I'm gonna live my life, and I'm gonna have no regrets about it because I just saw how short life can be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you don't live your life to the fullest right now, just like we were saying earlier, you're gonna regret it.
Absolutely.
20 years from now, from my age, I'm 65. I can't jump out of an airplane. I can't physically do the things that I probably could do now. I don't want to regret those things in 20 years, whatever.
Right.
Live your life now. This world is huge, and nobody on earth has seen all of it.
Right.
And there's always an aspiration for me, at least, to say that there's so much that I haven't learned yet, I haven't seen, I haven't experienced. In 2020, with all the COVID and the protests and the politics and all those things, they put it in perspective that, like, your time is not guaranteed. You gotta promise. It's not promised. You gotta do what's best for you right now, because either you can't promise tomorrow, or you're gonna regret it 10, 15 years from now.
Right.
You know, and that's also when I got back into trading. I worked on Wall Street back in the late 90s, up to right before 9/11, and I gave it up. But 2020, I'm like, you know what? This stock market corrected so quickly. All these circuit breakers, if y'all remember, back in March, the market had to stop because everything was just dropping like a recession, not even a recession, a depression was about to come upon us. I'm thinking, like, you know what? this is going to get fixed. I'm taking advantage. I'm getting involved. And months later, I'm knee deep into it. Probably one of the best decisions I made. So I capitalize on the conditions that, you know, I had around me, you know. And so it was an eye-opening experience 2020 for me to understand that life is short. Living your life is key, essential, but also taking advantage of your circumstances. You know, I'm like, I got a couple of dollars, I'm getting involved in trading, and a couple months later, I'm good. You know, so at the end of the day, it was an eye-opening experience, 2020 for me, to say, live your life now. We got this horrible disease, which I've actually had and survived, going around, and you know, it just proves that life is short. I'm not trying to, you know, regret, you know, things that I haven't done when I had the capability of doing them. You know, that's my take on 2020.
Reggie, what's your thoughts? 2020.
For me, it was more of a pause button. It gave me an opportunity to kind of dig into my family, because you couldn't go nowhere. You know, we're all together, and it was just a chance for us to just be us. You know, and to take stock into what I believed in, what my values were, and really watch people. I said, you know, I talk, you know, when Jamie and I get together, or Jason, and we all sit around and we talk a little bit, but I do a lot more. I do a lot more listening than I actually do speaking, because I like to watch people's reactions. I like to watch people. I like to learn from people. Like I'm mad right now that I did not bring a notebook, because I always have a notebook with me. I'm always taking notes on something, and it was 2020 to me. I don't. There were some really bad things. Obviously, the political unrest, the protests, like you saying, COVID, all those things. But I always believe that these things that come about are for you, not to, you know, they'll happen to you. They happen for you, and that's how I've always believed my life to be. And so it gave me an opportunity to really kind of see people's lives and how they respond to things. I'm a responsive guy. I'm not a reactive guy. You know, there's a difference between being a reactive person and a responsive person. To me, reactive, there's no thought. It's just, this is how you react. And sometimes it's necessary. But when you have a chance to really sit and respond to what your surroundings are, I think you see things much more clearly. You see your relationships much more clearly. You know, and I think that's what 2020 was able to do for me. It made me realize who people were, where they stood on situations that mean something to me, and it was eye-opening for a lot of ways, in the fact that with all the, you know, political unrest and the protests, more people that didn't look like me were finally more offended. And that's something that, because, I mean, you can go back to 1991 when, I mean, everybody saw Rodney King get beat up. Honestly, there's no real reason why he's still alive after that. Because, I mean, it's not. Other than the fact that God wasn't done with him yet. Right. And that was the first time it was broadcast across the country. Same things. It didn't stop happening until 2020, you know, but and it's been seen, but finally more people that don't look like us were offended by it. So it gave me an opportunity to see where people stood on those situations. And, you know, I mean, there are some people, you know, Facebook and all that stuff, like, well, I'm deleting this person, I'm deleting this person, I'm deleting this person. That's fine. You can. That's okay. There are some people that I kept as Facebook friends, because I think you just have to know who people are, know where people stand, and this way you move accordingly with them.
Right.
And so you have an opportunity to respond as opposed to react when you do meet them in real life.
So expand on that a little bit about, because, we've played ball together in college. We have mutual friends. We've seen some of the comments, responses, lack thereof. And how did it make you feel knowing that, when you have known guys for 20 years, take a different approach or different stance to all the unrest that was going on and remain silent?
It's disappointing, but I don't fault some people that remain silent if they don't know what to say.
Yeah.
If you don't know what to say, but then you find somebody that you are close to, and then you ask, why are you this mad, or why do you feel this way, or why do you think this is going on? Because you don't have to put all your business on the social media,
Right.
and that's the thing too. I mean, some people you looked at were quiet just because they don't feel the need to put all their business on social media, which is perfectly fine. Because I'm not one that puts all my business out there.
Right.
But I think it was the one that a little bit more vociferous about angles that are opposite the way I believed. Again, gave me an opportunity to see where they stood.
Yeah. I had a couple friends that have reached out to me throughout this time of 2020 and just asked the questions, man. Hey, I don't know everything, but I want to learn. I want to learn how I can be an ally, how I can be a part of the solution. And to me, that was encouraging, because to what you said, for the first time in our history, our young lives, is that we did see people become a little bit more vocal who did not look like us. And to me, that's encouraging. Myron, what's your thoughts? 2020 unfolded, kind of give me your thoughts on what you took away from it.
For me, Jamie, it was pause, preparation, and pivot. I had to stop, just as our situations created the world to stop. They put everything on pause. I had to do it as well. So I had to fall into the fabric and the landscape of what was going on. Pause. I had to re-prepare, because I saw the world, I saw what was going on around us as a paradigm shift. And with what we were experiencing, I had to re-prepare for what I thought was going to be necessary in terms of pivoting, for what I was going to do going forward. So to the point of with the civil unrest, the things that we had with that was going on in our country, it was very disappointing. I learned a lot about those that I thought were very close to me. I learned that a lot of things had changed, but I learned that more so things were still the same. And when I look at the things that were the same, it was a mindset. I didn't look at it from what their experiences were, but it was a mindset. The mindset had not changed, and I was extremely disappointed in those that I thought in all of this time, the last 20, 30 years we've grown up together, I thought that they would see things differently, and it was very disappointing to know their expressions were the same, their thoughts were the same as they were 25 years ago. And a lack of expression was very disappointing to me. But at the same time, man, I can't fault anybody for the lack, for what they say, what they won't say, they won't express, because at the end of the day, they're going to have to deal with their social pressures. They're going to have to deal with their peers. And so I understand that, but there were a few that would stand up and speak to some of those things that we continue to deal with. And it's to a great degree, it's not any different than it was before. It's just now our social platforms have allowed this opportunity for people to really speak what's in their heart. I'm a man of the spirit. I'm a man of the godly things. And there's a scripture that says, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so whatever is in here, this is the exhaust. And so there was a quote by Martin Luther King, and I can't call it, but basically what it says is, though, for those that wouldn't speak up, you do just as much disservice by not saying anything. And so I had to take into account, this was just my way. And I have to understand that everybody doesn't do things like I do. They don't process things like I process. So I had to respect that. But it gave me a different way of looking at things. It kind of gave me an opportunity to reevaluate how those that don't think like me and why. But I was always taught, and I've said this on several different occasions, I was taught to adapt, improvise, and overcome. And so that's what I do, that's what I have to do, and that's what I'll continue to do going forward. But life is good, man. Life is good in spite of it, and we keep moving.
So you said something about social media and having basically exposed people. Like, what do you really think about the purpose of these protests and things like that, and having to maybe delete some people from your social media and things like that? I remember specifically some friends of mine were just like, I'm deleting this person, I'm deleting that person, da 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 da. And I made it a point myself personally that I'm not deleting nobody. Why? Because if I have a point to make, and if it makes you feel uncomfortable, then you gotta check yourself.
Yeah.
Because just because this is all happening doesn't mean, or happening now, doesn't mean it hasn't been going on since 1991.
Right.
So if I'm gonna make the point that no, the purpose of some of these protests are valid. You need to hear what's being said, the purpose behind the marches and the protests of someone. And if that makes you feel uncomfortable, that has nothing to do with me.
Nothing.
That's on you. So you could then decide to block me or delete me. But I'm going to speak my truth. And if you're a friend or someone that I consider a close acquaintance or something along those lines, then you're going to accept that, even if you don't say anything. So
Or agree.
Or agree, exactly. But to shun me by, deleting me, that says everything I need to know about you.
Yeah.
That was one of the best things that came from 2020, because anybody that reacted that way and they just were so uncomfortable that they had to pull a trigger and if you don't support this message or whatever, you can go ahead and block me or delete me. I'm like, you should be encouraging. I don't want you to delete me. But if you feel you need to, then I clearly have not been your friend, or you have not been mine at least.
Authentic friend.
Exactly.
Because you don't respect, you don't have enough within yourself to respect how I feel. Although you may not agree, but you don't have the authenticity to agree to disagree.
Right. Exactly. We need more of that. Trust me, I have friends and acquaintances of all backgrounds and political affiliations and things like that. But there's a reason why they're my friends. There's a reason why they're my acquaintance. There's a reason why they're part of my network. And some of my best friends didn't vote for the same person I voted for.
Right.
I didn't unfriend them. I didn't block them, and they didn't block me. Just like any other circumstance that we have in our culture and things like that, we can be different in so many different ways. Your upbringing, yours, all different, but we have some things in common. That's just why I consider you guys friends. That's what we need more of. And that's, I feel, part of your message in your organization. People of all colors. And it actually, it's not even so much colors. It's just,
backgrounds and walks in life.
We could agree with every single thing, but we may have different religious beliefs. That gonna make you not want to be a friend with me? Same thing with politics, same thing with civil unrest or whatever. There's something that brings us together. We need to amplify that and not
Our
focus
common
on those
ground.
things. Exactly.
So you mentioned the organization. You know, POAC Succeed is a nonprofit organization that's an inclusive mission to bring people together. And one of the things I talk about often, and we've talked about it, is about an iceberg. We can all imagine, say, an iceberg. You see it in an Alaskan cruise, you see about 10% of ice above the water, right? You know, you see it with the optics of your eye. But if you ever submerge yourself beneath the water, there's a massive body of ice. 90% of that ice is below, holding that 10% up. And I use that imagery because that's people. If I meet you for the first time, I see 10% of you walk through, all right, tall, you're black, you know, you're athletic, whatnot. But that's all I know from the optics, right? You know, so one of my call to actions for those who I work with, and even in the community, is to encourage people to learn the 90%. You know, you guys met for the first time recently, 10%. But since that meeting, you guys have been able to submerge yourself in conversations and learn the 90%. We just sat here earlier and talked about the commonalities, things that we have in common just from our upbringings. And to me, that's the importance of this organization, is that, you know, everything is not always black and white. You know, it's been polarized in the, you know, whether it be the media, social media, whatever, it's all about race.
Yeah.
You know, that's a component that you can't ignore. However, there's way more to the individual that you talk to or engage with that has nothing to do with race sometimes too.
Right.
You want to expand on
So,
that?
so basically, that goes right into what I've been thinking before you all came here. So, like, you know, I manage a department. I have an ad for position in my department out right now, and I have an obligation that I cannot prejudge somebody based on their first name or anything along those lines. And when I look at myself, now I have a very ethnic name. My name's Jamal. There's not many other people other than black people that name Jamal. And I think about how I got to where I'm at. And it all boils down to the individual person, which I think is kind of touching on what you were just mentioning. I want to be judged on how good I am at my craft. I want you to give me the opportunity because I know how to do the job, not because I happen to be black.
Mm-hmm.
And it's until we get to that point where we say, I'm going to identify myself as a good person, as a God-fearing person, as a person that's kind, as a person that's generous. Oh, and I also happen to be black.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying you're good because you're good.
Right. So, you know, President Obama, you know, back in 2008, I voted for him, first black president, boom, boom, boom. I'm all about that. A couple years go by, we had a massive recession. 2009, we all remember that, it was horrible. He bears burden, the good and the bad. So from 2009 to 12, he recovers the economy. I'm looking at him as a person first before he's a black president. So I vote for him again in 2012. Why? Because he helped the country recover from where we were at in 2009. And the more I feel that we take our identity down a notch, that doesn't mean we forget it. That doesn't mean that we shed it. That just means that we focus more on how good you are at development. Period. Because if I saw your name on paper, whatever, and I didn't know what your nationality was, but I saw your background and how well you did and performed, whatever, I'm gonna get involved.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I meet you and I see that you're black,
Mm-hmm.
that's just extra. If we did that more, if we actually said, just look at the person, I feel like that's Dr. King's message, like judging someone by the content of their character as opposed to the color of their skin. I feel like, you know, there's been a little deviance from that in recent years in general. Like, be a good person, and
First.
then have first, and then have other people see, man, he's black.
Learn the 90%.
Exactly. And then everything that comes from that will can spread, can network, can influence other people to say, I don't have to be a black doctor. Let me just be a good doctor. And then when they see that I'm black and I'm operating on a black patient and family, they're like, that's awesome. You know what I mean? I feel we need more of that in society. A good message for this forum right here is don't shed your identity. Just shift your priority of being a good person before you say I'm black.
Absolutely.
So I think what you're, I think the component of what you're saying, the all-inclusive component, is awareness. And becoming, it's like I teach my children, you don't chase the prize, chase the purpose.
Right.
Become the absolute best at whatever your craft is. And I think that brings down that curtain, it brings down that wall of the preconceived notion. And then when people get to know who you are, I think it brings down to a certain degree that that notion that tends to lend to that preconceived notion about who you are rather than what you are.
Yeah. Or what you
being
look
the
like.
best, or what you look like.
Yeah.
I think we have to be the best at whatever it is that we're doing, and then it lends us a greater opportunity to become a part of that competitive nature, and we're recognized different from that. That doesn't take away the stigmas that we have to that we deal with on a daily basis. But I think it is. I think in a lot of cases, the things that we deal with, the racial injustices, the underserved, the underprivileged thing, it has to do with unawareness. A lot of my white counterparts, I don't think a lot of them are consciously racial. I think they are unconsciously aware. They don't know. And so when you try to educate them, for those that will open themselves up and give it an opportunity to understand what that thing is or what that really looks like, I think that brings up our level, brings up the opportunity for change.
Absolutely.
And so I would tell you that all-inclusive component is being aware. And until we are able to sit down and have those dialogues and those conversations, that's when it happened. With the civil unrest, with the George Floyd situation, I think what I saw was people that didn't particularly look like me. They joined us in a greater dimension that I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I've said in many occasions, I've been panelist on several other occasions, it is the greatest opportunity for reform, because now, instead of us just marching as a group of blacks, we're integrated, we're there's blacks and whites, and now we have an opportunity for change. So,
Reggie, what's your thoughts?
I think the biggest thing for me is you have to be intentional about what you're doing. The platform I have every single day is the head football coach at Central High School. I'm intentional about things that we talk about in our program. All the kids that I coach don't look like me. You know what I'm saying? And their parents don't look like me. Their parents may have different beliefs than I do. But it gives me the opportunity to at least express an opportunity and give them a safe space to be able to ask questions and be honest with them from my standpoint. Because like you said, I mean, we all come from different backgrounds. My truth is my truth. And how I see things may be different than how maybe their parents see things or how they'll grow up to see things. But at least they have heard it from me, you know? And so when all that stuff was going down and you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, it was my responsibility to reach out to those young men that I'm helping guide and help. And I'm not trying to be anybody else's parent other than my own kids, but it gave me an opportunity to say, listen, I've told my parents, listen, I'm an extension of you, but I'm not you. And I want to make sure that these young men understand that there are differences out there. And I want to make sure that if they have a space to be able to ask questions and to be able to be honest with themselves and their feelings, so we can all make a change, so we can move forward together. Because if you don't have those opportunities and you're not intentional about taking those opportunities, you miss out on some great conversations. You miss out on some great times and chances to influence what's coming up behind you.
Yeah, I think that's important because, we talk about like even a forum like this, or the fact that, I don't know how many kids or any team, whatever, but you have a position of leadership that you speak from to them. And if it's just one person that watches this, or on your team, or your staff, or whatever, that understands that you can come to me and ask a question, and I'm not going to necessarily judge you, but I'm going to give you an honest answer.
Yes,
absolutely.
And that honest answer may change your plight and your thinking, at least in this topic about racial relations or whatever. And it may be just one person. It may just be that one person that's like, man, I guess I didn't realize that.
But you know what, Jake? He has a center of influence, and so if you change that one person, I think you've met a milestone, because that one person can go back. We all have a center of influence, right?
We think very much alike.
Yeah, man. So he goes back. He goes back, and maybe he doesn't change the narrative, or maybe he doesn't change the mindset of the whole world. But he's got every one of us has a center of influence, and we have people that follow us. We have people that look up to us, etc. But we have an opportunity to change that scope, and so that scope has an opportunity to infiltrate their scope, and it broadens the overall opportunity for change.
So to bring this full circle, I oftentimes talk through our organization. POAC is the domino effect, and what you just said, and what Reggie just said, and Jamal just said, is that it takes one domino to fall for change to occur. Mm-hmm. It takes one person of influence to a team, or a business, or staff, for the mindset to maybe be changed slightly a little bit than they didn't realize before. Our goal is not sometimes to make you think like me. It's just sometimes to make you think differently from a situation or perspective that maybe you've never been forced to have to think from before. So I think that's important, is to just what you just said, Myron, is that you have to be the influence, you have to be the change, but it just takes that one conversation sometimes. We have to talk. We have to have dialogue. We have to have
and sometimes that conversation is uncomfortable.
And
that's okay.
It's always that way.
In most cases it is. But how I view it, I always look at things in the end goal, to the goal line. If you could respect that, I look at it at the goal line, and then I go backwards to say, how am I going to get there?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, one of the things I want people to understand, because when people that will see this, they will see, well, these are black guys getting together. It's not about that. It's bigger. It's bigger than black guys. We have to come together collectively, but eventually and long term, what we want to do is we want to create this narrative that would invite them into what we're doing. Because collectively, in and of ourselves, as a black culture, yes, we need to come together. But in a lot of cases, they see this as separatism.
Right.
People view this as separatism. These black guys are getting together and they're coming up with their own thing. No, that's not it for me. What I want to do for me, particularly in my business, and I think everybody should have this same mindset, I want to create a space that is, I'm a black business owner, but I want to create a space and a safe haven that makes whites feel comfortable enough to come in and engage and support what it is I'm doing. And so one of the things that I understand, because we only make up 13% of the population, if I'm going to do an all-comprehensive business, I've got to have them as a part of what I'm doing. They've got to be able to come into my space and see, yes, these are black owners, but we have common ground, and I could leave my children here at this place, and it's an all-inclusive opportunity. It's an all-inclusive business, and I'm comfortable with leaving it. And at that point is when I will be able to scale my business and be competitive on a larger scale. But us in and on ourselves, we will never go any further than where we are today.
I think what you just said goes right to what you just said at being a coach. Because how many of the kids that you coach look like you?
Not very many. It's like you said, probably about the same as the country, about 13% or so.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
See,
not very many.
So what I take from what he's saying and what your reality is like I equate that to actually Dr. King, because Dr. King's message of inclusiveness, having people judge people by their character, not by the color of their skin, and you think back decades before and look at where we're at now, we're not perfect, but we've come a long way. And it was because the inclusion of white people, government, people of influence back then that accepted his message, just like what you were just saying, a safe place and whatever, and they can move the narrative forward, create laws, create legislation that says, no, you can't judge him because he's black. No, you can't, that's discrimination, blah, 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 blah. We can't do this by ourselves.
Right.
We can have this conversation amongst ourselves.
Right. And that's all it is.
Right. We can
That's
have
all
this
it is.
conversation. But to move that needle, just like you said, you got that goal line, you need people
all of
to
us
join
to get there.
in. And that's why all the protests of this past year, it's still being talked about. It's still being talked about. And it's because it wasn't just a black protest. It was a national, all-inclusive
Absolutely.
protest. And
We've been marching, and we shall overcome, and climbing up on the rough side of the mountain for years in and of ourselves. But what did it really change?
exactly.
And until you change the mind, the mindset, we'll never get where we need to get. And at the end of the day, God created us all, and it's going to take us all. It takes a village to raise a child, but that village is not necessarily a black village. But what we have to do as a black culture is we have to become collective in our efforts. And at this point in time, that's what we lack. So as a result, that's why we're here today, is not to create separatism, but to create collectivism so that we can be recognized as a viable force for our white counterparts to join in with us, so we become a total comprehensive entity. And it would lend for more credibility for others that don't look like us to join us. And then at that point, that's when we rise.
So I got a final thought. In honor of Black History Month, I met this young lady. Her name is Tori. Really brilliant young lady. She's a graduate from the University of Missouri in Columbia. And, we're here to celebrate and talk about Black History Month. And she brought a term to my attention, which was Black Future. And I want to just take a final thought as to, we understand Black history from what we've been taught from our young age to where we are as adult men. But in a final thought with each of you guys, what does Black future look like? What would that look like to you?
I'm going to tell you, it is accountability. We've got to become accountable. We've got to understand what it is to become accountable. We've got to understand the landscape and the requirements to become a part of the bigger picture. And I have to be honest with you, we have lacked. We have fallen short. And so we've got to become accountable. We've got to understand the fabric. We've got to understand the narrative, and we've got to be able to speak that language. One of the things that I've said in several different events, there are two worlds. There's a black world and there's a white world. And we have to operate in both worlds. They don't have to operate in our world. And so our efforts are twice what's required of them. That's the landscape. Awareness, accountability is that conduit, I think, that brings us back together and creates that wholeness that gives us the opportunity to move forward. So that's what I see as Black Future.
Yeah, as far as Black Future, I mean, I would agree with every single thing you just said. I mean, you know, it's accountability, and it's also decisions. This could be a question of like, what makes you successful? Like, how do you get to where you're at, and so on? It's decisions. And as far as our future, it's like, what are the decisions that we have been making, and where has that gotten to us to? Are we okay with our daughters having kids at 16 years old? Are we okay with our sons hanging on the street at 16 years old? It's a decision, even as a parent, to say, you're not going to do that because you're going to be successful. It's a decision, even as an individual, to say, I'm going to get not good grades, I'm going to get great grades.
You have to.
Right.
You got it.
In our future. So it's like, are we going to keep identifying, or are we going to keep living our life through identity? Or are we going to live our life with purpose and have an actual vision about what we're going to be as people, that we happen to be Black? And that comes from a decision. Because I can decide, we all we've all been homeless, we've all had severe struggles that have taught us lessons that get to this point. But we're at that point now too. For your kids, I don't have kids yet, whatever. But the decisions that we make as parents collectively to father our children, to guide them correctly, can change the landscape of how we're viewed as Black people. And it's never been more important, I feel, than now. Because now we got eyeballs on us. This past year, a lot of racial issues have been exposed, and you talk about social media. These things have been happening for centuries.
Nothing new.
It's just because of a cell phone that we could take a video, and now people see it. But what do we do in the future, or for that now that develops our future? Decisions, accountability, which goes hand in hand with decisions. I'm going to hold myself accountable that my kid is in the streets at 1 a.m, slinging rock, or whatever the case may be. He's got 2 ways out of this hood: in jail or in a box. And who's responsible for that? Me, as a father. That was my lack of accountability, and my decision that I didn't make to bring him in the house, make sure he is disciplined, make sure he has an atmosphere that gives him the opportunity to grow and learn and things like that. The more that we understand that life is about decisions as Black people, and we look at ourselves as people that happen to be Black in this country, we can move the needle. We can progress further, and we can, like you said before, have more people buy into that. Have more people buy into that. Because people bought into Dr. King's message. He's Black. We're descendants of slaves, and this man is literally speaking to millions of people and is influencing people that do not look like him to actually enact and create laws, civil rights laws. So why can't we do that now? As parents, as peers, take accountability, but more so make better decisions.
Yeah.
Like, that this young man got shot, killed, or whatever. He's in the gang. That it was a decision that you made as a parent to not force him to not be in that gang.
So Jamal, and I guess I think what you're saying is, even today, we all are where we are, good or bad, because of our decisions.
100%. And
That's it.
We all have our own personal stories. I, as the youngest in my family, saw my older peers' decisions that scripted their life from that point forward. And I made a decision to not do those things, to protect myself from those things. And that's where I'm at. That's why I'm where I'm at today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reggie, to kind of bring it home, what does Black Future look like to you?
To pinpoint things a little bit further for me, it's my kids. You know, my son is 19 years old. My daughters are going to be 17. My youngest is 15. It's my responsibility to help them create the decisions that they make, to hold them accountable. I'm trying to do the best job that I possibly can as a father who didn't have a father in his life. So it's for me, it's watching my kids embrace who they are as individuals and as a part of our culture to move forward. That's so to pinpoint things a little further for me is to really help continue to grow great humans, you know, and that's whether they be my kids or any kid that I come in contact with. I've been fortunate enough to do some different speaking engagements, and I take advantage of those times to really say, listen, hell, half of St. Joe probably has my cell phone number. And if there ever any need to call me, to reach out, to just be a comfort or an ear to listen.
More than a coach.
More than a coach. More than a coach. You know, I mean, and some of the kids that I reach out to don't play for me. And that's okay. Because there's a purpose. I don't ever feel I've ever been anywhere that I'm not supposed to be. And for whatever reason, if for you to have my phone number, for you to call me in good time or bad time, that's exactly why you have my number. And I think that's an important part of that moving forward, the future.